Chapter 587 Royal Family Banquet 8. Zhouing saw that the emperor had finished reading and then told him about the situation of Madame Zhao and her daughter and where they were now. She stayed silent once she finished what she had to say. The emperor immediately kowtowed and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Mother God." After saying that, he stood up and kept the evidence. Then, he asked Uniquely to bring all the officials to the banquet. He went to find Xiao Hong and personally went to Madame Zhao. Of course, the Empress people were also imprisoned on the spot. He later also called for Miss Zhao to come over. After handing them over to Xiao Hong, he returned to the banquet. When Zhouing returned, Mingyu and Gu Wanning were back in their seats. Seeing her return, they asked curiously, "Why did they look for you just now?" Zhouing didn't hide, and she told them the reason for their visit. Of course, she only told them that Madame Zhao wanted to join forces with her to deal with Lord Zhao. As for the other stuff she found by herself, she didn't mention it one bit. "You didn't agree, did you?" Gu Wanning asked. "I'm not stupid. To put it bluntly, she's planning to use me. Of course, I won't be stupid enough to let her take advantage of that. Besides, when she held power back then, she didn't stop Zhao Xiuying from snatching Zi's husband. Why should I help her now? It's right for you to reject her. To be honest, she's just a backstabber. Back then, she enjoyed everything with a clear conscience. Now that it's her turn to fall from grace, she wanted to turn around and stab her husband. Believe it or not, if you agree, she will blame you if anything happens in the future." Zhouing nodded in agreement. At this time, Uniquely had already walked in with a group of officials. However, they did not disperse immediately. After discussing something for a while, they went back to their seats. Mingyu immediately got up and said, "All right, I have to go back immediately." She returned to her seat in King An's imperial residence. Gu Chungrui sat down and asked, "Are you guys okay? Did you get bullied?" "Don't worry. With Princess Mingyu around, no one will dare to cause trouble for us." "Yeah, don't worry, cousin. We're fine. It must be hard on you to deal with so many people. Hurry up and drink some tea." After Gu Wanning finished speaking, she took a teacup and poured him some tea. "Thank you." Gu Chungrui thanked her and continued, "Actually, it's nothing much. It's just letting them know about some new farming techniques. I will organize it into a booklet later. When the time comes, everyone will have a copy, so I don't have to explain it to them individually. This is a good idea. If it works, it can be passed down from generation to generation. They'll help you with that later. All right, let's write together." Gu Wanning looked at them and was envious of their relationship, but she knew it would never happen to her. She could only hope that she could continue to get along with her husband in the future. Soon, the Emperor, Empress, and Empress Dowager rushed over. After bowing, everyone sat down, and the Emperor quickly announced, "We've discussed most of what we need to do before this. When you return, remember to write a proposal into a memorial and submit it to me. Remember, everyone only has 2 missions this year. First, promote food as soon as possible so that starving isn't a thing as soon as possible. Secondly, encourage the birth of children. Women who were not married at the age of 18 could be forced to marry." "We will obey," everyone immediately replied. "All right, the banquet has started. Everyone, have a good meal today, and let us know how greenhouse vegetables taste." After the emperor finished speaking, he asked Uniquely to arrange for the dishes to be served. Chapter 588 The Emperor's Might 1. Because today's banquet was mainly to taste the greenhouse dishes, all the dishes were relatively light. The oiliest was the fried eggplant. Fortunately, the main staple was fried pancakes, so everyone was more or less filled. When everyone was almost done eating, the emperor stood up and said, "Everyone, tell me, what do you think of the greenhouse vegetables?" Relatively speaking, the vegetables' taste is slightly mild, but it's good enough that we could eat such fresh vegetables in the middle of winter. The Empress Dowager replied, "Indeed, we must plant more leafy vegetables in the hot spring manner in winter. Vegetables are too rare in the winter." King Xian echoed. With the 2 of them speaking out, everyone followed suit. Everyone praised the greenhouse vegetables to the heavens and wanted to buy more to satisfy their cravings. So let's spread the planting methods as soon as possible. You can still plant a batch when you return to your county. Maybe at most, It would be slightly young when it's time for harvest. The emperor looked at Gu Chungrui and added, I would have to trouble Minister Gu to teach them more over the next 2 days and bring them around your manor. This is my duty and my honor. In addition, I plan to make a booklet teaching the planting techniques of the white potato and how to build a greenhouse. This way, this knowledge can be spread faster and wider. Good. All right, everyone. Hurry up and get to work. When the time comes, I will find someone to help you print the booklets. The emperor quickly added, It's getting late, so you all can leave the banquet any time. After saying that, the emperor left. Zhou Jiaying was a bit anxious about the emperor's series of actions. Why didn't he say anything else except eating and working? It was not easy for her to seize an opportunity to make things difficult for Zhou, but it slipped away just like that. King Kong noticed her abnormality and warned her, Father isn't in a good mood today, so don't go looking for trouble. Otherwise, even I can't save you. No, I just feel that today's banquet ended too quickly. That better be the case. Let's hurry back. King Kong stood up. After the guests left one after another, the emperor directly brought guards to imprison the empress in her palace. After the empress received the news, she looked at the emperor in disbelief and asked, Your Highness, what did I do wrong? Why are you imprisoning me? You don't know? Think about it carefully. After the emperor finished speaking, he left the guards behind and brought her aides and Madame Zhao into the study to interrogate them. Madame Zhao didn't need to be interrogated, and she told the emperor everything she knew. She kowtowed and begged, I know I'm guilty of my silence and should not have kept quiet all this time. But my children are really in the dark about this. Your Highness, I beg you to give them a way out. Do you know how King Hui and Lord Zhao communicate? Through a messenger pigeon, but am not clear about the specifics. I was never privy to the details. I hope what you said is true. The emperor nodded and took the empress' aides. Because of Madame Zhao's confession, they also quickly confessed. To put it bluntly, the empress knew the emperor didn't favor her and wanted to bring in a beautiful young girl to help her maintain the emperor's favor. As for the rest, it was some other private matter. The emperor more or less knew about it, so there was no need to interrogate them further. He then commanded Xiao Hong to execute the aides. On the other side, Lord Zhao had just boarded his carriage when he was struck on the back of his neck and fainted. After everyone had left, Lord Zhao was brought directly to the royal study. The emperor looked at the unconscious Lord Zhao and asked the guard beside him, Did any news of this leak? Chapter 589 The Emperor's Might 2. Not at the moment. Go bring some men to their residence, and bring the eldest son of the Zhao family over. Roger that. The guard responded and turned to leave. Seeing this, Eunuch Li took a cup of cold water and splashed it on Lord Zhao's face. Lord Zhao woke up with a jolt. When he saw the emperor standing before him, he was deeply shocked. He quickly knelt and kowtowed. Long live the emperor. All hail. All right, I heard you loud and clear, but I'm sure you can't wait for me to die as soon as possible. When Lord Zhao heard this, he instantly broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly replied, I wouldn't dare. No, you're very daring. After the emperor said this, he pulled out the complaint Madame Zhao wrote and threw it in his face. After Lord Zhao took it, he hurriedly took a look. With just one glance, he felt his view darkening, and his mind blanked out. He fainted immediately. The emperor understood when he saw that what was written on it was 80% true. Thinking of this, he went up and kicked him. When Lord Zhao woke up, the emperor demanded seriously, Tell me everything you've done all these years, and maybe I can give you a way out. Lord Zhao didn't feel relieved. Instead, he wanted to cry, because he clearly knew that even if he confessed and the emperor did not kill him, the first prince and Marquis Dingon would not let him off either. In the end, he would still die. The emperor looked at his expression and knew what he was thinking. He sneered and questioned, Do you think that I'm inferior to King Hui and that I can't even protect your family's lives? No. You only have one chance. I have to give an explanation to the families of those officials who died unjustly. Otherwise, I will execute your entire family. Lord Zhao completely wilted after hearing this. He wiped his tears and asked, If I confess, can you spare my children? As long as they didn't participate, they'll spare their lives. I swear that they really don't know, and I never dare to let them know. So, tell me. To start, it was 10 years ago when I was promoted. After washing up, Zhouing sat by the bed and applied hand cream as she sighed. No wonder everyone is fighting to the death for that chair under the emperor's, but that power can be useful when it needs to. From what you're saying, something must have happened. Gu Chungrui put down his book, turned around, and put his arm around her shoulder. Of course, and it's a big deal. It's much bigger than Yang Shiqing's corruption. Zhouing replied mysteriously. Gu Chungrui smiled and kissed her deeply on the lips. You should tell me now. Maybe, but I want to drink a bowl of white fungus lotus seed soup tonight. No problem, leave it to me. Zhouing leaned into his arms and whispered about how Madame Zhao had found her and how Lord Zhao had confessed. Gu Chungrui gasped after hearing that. If he remembers correctly, 10 to 12 counties were under Lord Zhao's influence. In other words, they had killed 3 to 4 7th-grade county magistrates with outstanding achievements. Lord Zhao wouldn't be the only one falling this time. The first prince would probably be gone as well. He hugged her and kissed her. Fortunately, you didn't openly agree to cooperate with Madame Zhao today. Otherwise, we would have been dragged into the mud by her. I'm not stupid. If it weren't for the fact that what happened was so major, I wouldn't have bothered. Yes, my wife is the smartest. Chapter 590 Betrothal 1. The couple entered Zhou Ying's inner space. While she checked out the various places she usually checked, she paid special attention to the officials there this time. She realized that quite a number of people had been impersonated. Even King Kong had begun to do similar things. She couldn't help but sigh. It seems that King Rui is the most stupid. However, no matter how much she lamented, she could not take action directly. Instead, she collected a list of names and especially focused on the 2 disguise artists. Then, through her interspace, she handed it to the emperor. The next day, when the emperor saw the name list, he felt his scalp go numb and almost fainted. At the same time, the emperor also realized that they couldn't deal with this matter openly. Otherwise, the royal family would lose the people's faith. At the thought of this, a wave of fatigue washed over him. He removed King Hui and King Kong from the list of heirs, as such unscrupulous behavior definitely shouldn't inherit the throne. Otherwise, the Yang family's empire would be destroyed in his hands. After pondering for a while, he changed his way of handling Lord Zhao. He made him stay in the capital to help Gu Chungrui promote greenhouses and sweet potatoes. The emperor chose another trusted aide for Kaiyang Prefecture. At the same time, he gave them a hidden mission, which was to find an opportunity in private to get rid of those spies openly and pull those who could be roped in. Over the next 3 days, the emperor continuously sent his people to various places and began to slowly pull out the nails his sons had embedded. Gu Chungrui was also getting busy showing the local officials around the greenhouses. He also had his hands full selling the greenhouse vegetables to them. He came to the realization that their supply wouldn't be able to cope with demand. So he took some vegetables out of Zhou Ying's interspace and supplied them to the palace. Of course, this purchase would no longer go through the account books. The first month of the new year ended as the couple slogged through their work. On the 2nd day of February, King Rui personally brought Butler Feng in the official media to present his betrothal gift to Gu Wanning. Gu Chungrui, waiting at home, stepped forward and cupped his fists to welcome them into the residence. After entering the house, he called for King Rui to sit down and said, "Your Highness, I am grateful that you are willing to personally come." King Rui glanced at him and replied, "I'm marrying my wife. Isn't that what I should do?" Gu Chungrui nodded. "I guess I'll be your brother-in-law soon." "Yeah, but don't expect me to call you big brother. It's fine. Just admitting it in your heart is enough." "All right. I heard from my cousin that you planted another kind of crop called red sweet potato. What's the difference between it and the white sweet potatoes?" "Ah, it was a crop bequeathed to me when I went to the Mother God temple for prayers. It looks like a white potato, but it's relatively small. The core is red and especially sweet. It's a crop that needs more water, but it's very delicious when roasted." King Rui nodded after hearing this. "Leave some seeds for me later. The white potatoes are too dry sometimes." They'll just give you the crops when they mature. All right, I don't need too much. 1 acre of seedlings is enough. Understood. He'll hand it over to Uncle Feng. At this moment, Gu Wanning came in with a pot of tea and bowed. Greetings, Your Highness, brother cousin. No need to be so polite. King Rui nodded. He looked at Gu Wanning and realized she had rosier cheeks than when she was in the Yang family. Her skin was fair and glowing. It was obvious that she was living quite well here. He asked, "Do you have any special requirements for the furnishings in your room?" "No incense and no flowers," Gu Wanning answered with a red face. King Rui looked at her in surprise and knew she was being cautious. He then nodded and replied, "Got it? Thank you, Your Highness. You guys continue chatting while I'll go prepare lunch." Yang Wanning politely greeted the matchmaker sitting beside her, then turned around and left. Chapter 591 Betrothal 2 Outside. Zhou Ying counted the dowry with Mrs. Chiu, Mrs. Sun, Kuei Hua, and Shi Zhu. After finishing, she looked up at Butler Feng and said, "Uncle Feng, I've finished counting. I'm relieved. You guys go ahead. I'll go back now." After Butler Feng finished speaking, he turned around and was about to leave. Zhou Ying quickly stopped him. "Wait, you've helped us a lot before. It's not easy for you to come to visit us, especially on such a joyous occasion. How can you leave?" "But no buts. As long as no one dies, there's nothing more urgent than this. It's the same if you go back early after having a meal." After saying that, Zhou Ying directly helped him into the house. She said to Gu Changrui, "Rui, I'm leaving Uncle Feng with you. I'm going to cook now." "Okay. Remember to make some shredded radish salad." Gu Changrui stood up and said, "Got it." Zhou Ying turned around and left after that. Gu Changrui guided Uncle Feng to sit and poured him a glass of water. Uncle Feng looked at King Rui with a troubled expression. Seeing this, King Rui nodded and said, "Do stay, Uncle Feng. It's rare for you to get a chance to taste Mrs. Gus cooking." "All right." Uncle Feng sat down with a clear conscience. Gu Changrui said, "If Your Highness likes to eat Ying's dishes, you can come over more often in the future. She has nothing much to do now and is quite free." "I will." King Rui nodded. However, the problem wasn't whether Zhou Ying was busy or not. He's getting busy, and it was inconvenient for him to come. After Zhou Ying entered the kitchen, she saw that Gu Wanning was trying her best to slice the radish. She went forward and said, "You don't have to be so careful. It's much easier to shred the radish after you flatten one side. In addition, when pressing the ingredients with your left hand, your fingers must dig deeper, or else it would be easy to cut it." After saying that, she demonstrated it to Gu Wanning again. After ensuring she learned it, she quickly peeled the outer skin and shredded it. Zhou Ying then soaked it in light salt water. She walked to Biaozi, who was processing the fish, and said, "Brother Biaozi, they'll be cooking today, so you watch carefully from the side. If you can't remember anything, write it down in your notebook. When the restaurant opened, these dishes would be on the menu." "All right, I will definitely study hard." Biaozi nodded solemnly. At the same time, he was very grateful to Zhou Ying. He knew that in this era, all craftsmanship was passed down to the younger generation. Even teachers were unwilling to teach their apprentices anything. There were very few people like Zhou Ying who didn't hide anything. Biaozi knew he couldn't miss this opportunity. After all the ingredients were prepared, Zhou Ying explained to him step by step how to cook these dishes, especially how he should control the flames. Gu Wanning also took a notebook and listened earnestly. Zhou Ying made a total of 10 dishes and 1 soup, which symbolized perfection. They were squirrel mandarin fish, steamed pork with rice noodles, 8 treasures chicken, roasted lamb chop, mushroom and pork, braised eggplant, mushroom with rapeseed, sweet and sour radishes, beef sauce, and fried salted peanut. The soup to end it all was duck soup. As for the carbs, Gu Wanning made scallion pancakes, meat pies, vegetable rolls, and pumpkin biscuits. However, because there weren't many guests and they had to be divided into 2 tables for men and women, the amount of food cooked wasn't too much. On the matchmaker's side, it was mainly Zhou Ying, Mrs. Mother Chiu, and Hai Eng. As for the men's table, it was Gu Changrui and Gu Chenglin who had rushed over. After the meal and sending off the satisfied King Rui and the rest, Zhouing gave the list of betrothal gifts to Gu Wanning and said, "You and Qinglin discuss how you'll arrange these betrothal gifts. The two of us won't interfere." Chapter 592 Additional Dowry. Gu Wanning shook her head. "Since we've moved in, we've always treated you as family. You can make the arrangements. We have no objections." Yes, you guys can make the arrangements," Gu Chenglin echoed. The destruction of the Yang residence made him clearly realize the importance of Gu Chengrui and his wife to them. If they hadn't been helping them all along, even if they had broken off their ties with the Yang family, their fate wouldn't have been any better than Yang Qingxin's. At the very least, Yang Qinglin would be implicated and never be able to participate in the imperial examination again. Gu Chengrui smiled and handed the list to Yang Qinglin. "Pick 3 things you like and leave them as a memento." Yang Qinglin was surprised by that offer. He glanced at the list and picked out a jade pendant, an inkstone, and a painting. Gu Chengrui nodded. After picking out a wooden eagle ornament, he returned it to Zhou Ying. "All right, I've gathered all 66 sets of dowry for Wanning. The rest would be left for Qinglin when he marries. If there's any extra, it's fine too." "All right." Zhou Ying took it and looked at Mrs. Sunday. "Mrs. Sun, please help me out here. This is my first time preparing a dowry, so I'm afraid I'll make a mistake." "Yes, madam." Mrs. Sun immediately nodded. At the same time, she was very impressed with the couple. They returned a huge amount of betrothal gifts without blinking. It was rare to meet such selfless people. In the afternoon, before the betrothal gifts were stored in the warehouse, Zhou Ying and Mrs. Sun brought some people and changed the 30 boxes of betrothal gifts into 25 sets of dowry, excluding the food and the ones picked out. In addition to the 40 boxes of dowry they had prepared previously, they sealed the 66 boxes and got them ready for transportation. In the evening, Zhou Ying and Gu Chengrui discussed for a while and decided to personally gift 6 sets of dowry to Gu Wanning. 2 pounds of bird's nest, 100-year-old ginseng, some cloth, a tea set, a box of pearls, and a full set of soap and rouge powder that Gu Chengrui had personally made. Although they did not spend a tael of silver, these items cost at least 10,000 taels of silver. They did not expect that on the morning before the wedding, the Liu and Yao families, who had not shown their faces all this time, would come and send 2 sets of dowry each. When Zhou Ying found out they were Mrs. Yao's and Mrs. Liu's sisters-in-law, she immediately invited them in and said, "Aunties, please take a seat. What tea do you like?" "Anything is fine. We're not picky," Aunt Yao replied. Zhou Ying sized up the 2 of them. Seeing that they looked pale and thin, she knew their lives were not good. She made a cup of rose tea for each and said, "Drink a cup of rose tea. It's good for a woman's health." "Thank you." The 2 of them took the tea and thanked Zhou Ying. Zhou Ying saw they were a little uneasy, so she asked, "Aunties, how are your families?" "It's all right, neither good nor bad," Aunt Lu replied. "Although we were implicated in the beginning, we're fine now. Moreover, we've benefited a lot from you guys returning." Aunt Yao smiled and replied, "Is it because the Gu family was exiled back then?" "Yes, but it's only for a period of time." The 2 women explained the situation at home in detail. Zhou Ying also learned that the 2 families were actually affiliated with the Gu family back then. With the fall of the Gu family, the lives of the 2 families were naturally affected for the worse. However, the Yao family's son, who was an official in the court, was timid and cautious. After being demoted by 2 grades, he was untouched overall. Now, because of Gu Shengru's arrival, he was restored to his original position and became a 4th-grade official in the Ministry of Rights. Chapter 593 Chicken Soup for the Soul. The Liu family was a merchant family, so their relationship with the Gu family was close. Therefore, they were scrutinized even more severely and only had 10% of the family property left compared to their peak. However, their house, 2 manors, and a shop still existed. It was not a problem to maintain the family's livelihood. After chatting for a while, Aunt Lu said hesitantly, "I heard that Lord Gu is promoting greenhouse vegetables now. I wonder if we ordinary merchants can grow them?" "Of course. If you want to plant some, send a child who can endure hardship and let him help and learn in our manor. He can also explore and learn while helping out. Otherwise, You might not be able to grow these vegetables just by hearing instructions. That's great. May I know where the manor is? Get someone to come over early in the morning the day after tomorrow, and Chung Rui will bring him over. All right, sorry for troubling you. We'll take our leave now. If you're free, drop by any time. After Zhou finished speaking, she sent them out. At the same time, she gave them a piece of pork and a piece of beef. After they left, Zhou took a look at the things they had prepared. The Yao family gave a set of gold jewelry and 2 batches of good fabric. The Liu family gave a pair of jade pendants, 1 purple and 1 blue, and 2 sets of bedding with good embroidery. Gu Wanning walked over and looked at the things on the ground. Cousin-in-law, didn't you say that Mrs. Yao and Mrs. Liu didn't treat you well before? Why did you accept their family's gifts? In this world, there are only 2 kinds of relationships between people. One is a blood-related relationship, and the other is a relationship of mutual benefit. However, your blood-related relationship is shallow, so you don't have many relatives that you can use. Therefore, you have to rely on benefits to make some connections. You have to remember that no matter what kind of relationship it is, it has to be respectful and mutually beneficial. Don't blindly take, and don't blindly give. Otherwise, the relationship won't last long. Now that the 2 families have extended an olive branch, well accepted. As for whether we can continue to get along in the future, it depends on our cooperation. Just remember to keep some things to yourself and not tell others everything. Gu Wanning nodded thoughtfully and asked, what is the relationship between husband and wife? Husband and wife? A couple's relationship is the most complicated of all relationships. When you can trust each other, respect each other, understand each other, and like each other, then you will be closest to each other. Chapter 594 Marriage. Yang Wanning immediately recalled Mrs. Cui. Although she couldn't say Mrs. Cui loved Yang Shicheng, it was true that she had done too much for him. In the end, she lost her reputation and her life. Zhou saw that Yang Wanning had taken her words in and continued, King Rui is a good person. He won't make things difficult for you as long as you don't make a big mistake. Of course, I must remind you that you are a secondary consort. You have to handle your relationship with her well, or else the 2 of you, especially you, will not have a good time. How should I handle this? Respect. I don't need to say much, and you should understand. Your duty is to serve His Highness, and you should focus all your attention on him. Try your best to make him like you, and adapt to your presence. To put it bluntly, whether your position is stable or not depends on His Highness, not any other woman. Just be extra careful to prevent yourself from being schemed against. The last thing is not to go overboard, not to interfere in things that should not be your business, and not to fight for things that never belong to you. As long as you do these 3 things, even if the primary consort comes looking for trouble with you, His Highness will still stand by your side. As Zhou said this, she suddenly remembered the 4th prince and his scheme. It seemed that she had to keep an eye on King Rui's residence. After chatting for a while longer, Yang Wanning returned to her courtyard with a heavy heart. Soon, it was Gu Wanning's wedding day. Early in the morning, Zhou got up and got busy. First, the Ministry of Rights people came over to bathe Gu Wanning and dress her up. She didn't expect that the person who would be blessing her was Madame Consortin. After dressing her up, she even gave Gu Wanning 1,000 taels of silver as her stash of money. After they were done with their work, it was time for others to gift additional dowries. To be honest, there weren't many others here. Other than some normal gifts, only Mingyu was wholeheartedly prepared for this. Mingyu alone added another 10 sets of dowries, which was quite a hefty sum. When it was almost time, King Rui also arrived. Since Gu Wanning did not have parents, only Qinglin was out to greet the groom and ask for a red packet. Gu Chungrui carried Gu Wanning in her carriage and sent her to King Rui's residence with her dowry and Gu Qinglin. After the bridal carriage had left, Zhou poured a basin of water outside, and it was over. After returning, she entertained everyone and chatted for a while. Next, it was time to start the banquet and entertain the people who came to gift additional dowries. After a meal, when most people had left, Madame Consortin found her and asked, "Ing, do you still have some cucumbers?" "I do, but not much. Why don't I send it to you tomorrow?" Madame Consort and shook her head and whispered, "Just give me as much as you have. My stomach hasn't been good recently, so I just want to eat something fresh to reduce the heat." Zhouing was stunned when she heard that. Wasn't this constipation? She quickly asked, "Have you eaten any medicine? You shouldn't delay this for too long." Madame Consort and shook her head and grimaced. "I don't like to drink that medicine. It's too bitter." "All right then, please wait a moment. We'll get them for you." Zhouing turned around and went to the kitchen. However, there were only 2 cucumbers left in the kitchen. Fortunately, the servants had gone for lunch, so Zhouing could take out 5 more cucumbers from her inner space and hand them to Madame Consort and his nanny. After sending Madame Consort off, Zhouing returned to her room and laid down. She did not sleep. Instead, she spread out her divine senses toward King Rui's residence. At this time, the wedding banquet was almost over, so Zhouing went to the bride and groom's chamber. Chapter 595 Discovery. Mingyu was having her meal with Gu Wanning. The two of them were talking and laughing, and it was a harmonious scene. Zhouing took a bird's eye view of the entire residence. Finally, her gaze landed on Xiao Lanlan, who was busy making soup in the kitchen. She thought Xiao Lanlan looked familiar, but she couldn't recognize her because she was obviously fatter than before. Just as she was about to look away, she suddenly saw Xiao Lanlan sneakily take out a packet of powder from her waist and pour it into the soup. After mixing it well, she ladled the soup into a bowl and turned around to shout, "Sister Qingtao, the sea cucumber and chicken soup is ready." Qingtao immediately walked in and picked up the bowl. "Thank you, Sister Lan." She turned around and rushed forward with the food tray. Just as Zhouing was about to follow up, she suddenly saw Xiao Lanlan's sinister smile. However, it quickly disappeared, and Xiao Lanlan got busy again. Could she be the spy King Kong buried in King Rui's residence? Zhouing muttered. After memorizing her appearance, she chased after Qingtao. She happened to see her walking into the main courtyard. In the main courtyard, besides Sun Miaoke, there were also the Empress Dowager, Consort Xian, and a few elders from the royal family. Who is she trying to harm? Zhouing couldn't understand her target, and she couldn't be bothered to. Just as Qingtao entered the room, Zhouing deliberately poked her leg with her divine sense. Qingtao tripped on the door sill and dropped the food tray in her hand to the ground, spilling the chicken and sea cucumber soup on the ground. Qingtao was so frightened that her face immediately turned pale. She immediately knelt and said, "Mistress, please punish me." Sun Miaoke was about to speak when the Empress Dowager near the entrance stopped her and said, "All right, hurry up and clean it up." The Empress Dowager saw clearly that Qingtao tripped because she couldn't raise her leg over the door sill. Therefore, the Empress Dowager assumed Qingtao was too tired and chose not to make a scene on this auspicious day. After Qingtao finished cleaning up and threw the broken bowl into the trash, Zhouing took some soup into her inner space. She stared at them for a while more. After making sure that Xiao Lanlan did not strike again, she retreated. After entering her interspace at night, Zhouing briefly explained what happened and handed the samples to Gu Chungrui. "Rui, do a test and see what that powder was." "All right, leave it to me. However, you have to feed those livestock on the grasslands." "No problem." Zhouing agreed and turned around, heading to the grassland to get busy. After she was done, she picked out the ones ready for slaughter and rushed to the foot of the mountain. She butchered them and stored the meat in her warehouse. She left a fat goose behind and brought it into the villa to make a stew. As soon as the stew was ready, Gu Chungrui walked down with a tired expression and asked, "It smells so good. What delicious food did you make this time?" "I made a goose stew. Let's eat a bowl before sleeping." Zhouing looked at the list in his hand and asked curiously, "Did you find anything?" "Yeah. It's just contraceptive medicine, but in powder form." "Just contraceptive medicine?" "Yes. I suspect that Sun Miaoke has been drinking this all this time. Otherwise, why hasn't there been news of pregnancy since the two of them are healthy?" "Really?" "Yes. Having children is also a very important thing in the competition for the throne." "That's true. It seems like King Kong is trying to cut King Rui's line to the throne." "Yeah. Now that Wanning has entered his residence, I'm afraid there will be big movements soon. How should we remind King Rui?" Chapter 596, Confirming Her Identity. Wait a moment. Zhou went to the study room, took a piece of paper and a pencil, and quickly sketched out the fattened Xiao Lanlan. She handed it to Gu Chengrui and asked, "Do you know her?" "She was the one who drugged the soup." Gu Chengrui paused, then nodded and pondered. "I do have a feeling that she looks familiar. I think I've seen her somewhere before, but I can't remember where." Gu Chengrui looked at it carefully before replying thoughtfully, "It does look a little familiar, but I can't remember at the moment. Can you recall any other obvious characteristic about her?" "Special characteristics?" Zhou tried to recall. Other than that hideous face, she really didn't remember anything else. Thus, she looked at King Rui's residence again through her interspace. She had to search around the servants' room before finally finding that woman. After looking at her carefully, she realized there were quite a few acne marks on her face. Other than a mark near her right ear, there was nothing else. Zhou told him about Xiao Lanlan's characteristics after leaving the residence. Gu Chengrui pondered for some time and still shook his head. He could not remember who she was. He said, "Let's not care about her for now. I'm going to cut a melon to eat. I'm starving." "You didn't eat enough last night?" "I drank too much at noon and didn't have much appetite. So, I didn't eat my fill." After Gu Chengrui said that, he went to the farm to pick up 2 honey melons. He washed and cut them into pieces before placing them on the table. "If you want to eat some, help yourself. Just put it there. You look after the pot, and I'll go take a look at the grounds to see if there's anything to put away." Zhou went out to the farms to get busy again. After harvesting anything that was ripe, she planted more cotton this time. Because of the widespread promotion of sweet potatoes and wheat, there would definitely not be many people who grew cotton. It's been 4 years since anyone harvested cotton. There would definitely be a shortage this winter. Thus, she could also make a fortune by planting cotton, other than helping the poor. Through the various mother god temples, Zhou surveyed the entire country. After confirming that there were no big problems other than some asking for help, she selectively distributed goods to those in need. After they were done with their work, the stew was almost ready. The couple had a bowl of stew with some white wine, washed up, and went to bed. The next day at dawn, Gu Chengrui suddenly sat up and shouted out, "I remember who that person is now." Zhou, who was sleeping soundly, was jolted awake. When she woke up, she punched him a few times and asked, "What are you doing?" "Don't you know that scares me?" "I'm sorry. I was too excited." Gu Chengrui grabbed her cute fist and patted her back. "Fine. What were you talking about?" "I remember the person who drugged the soup." "Who is she?" "Do you still remember Xiao Lanlan?" "Xiao Lanlan?" Zhou paused for a moment before she teased, "It's that rotten peach blossom of yours, right?" "Yes, but she's put on a lot of weight. In addition, I hadn't seen her for a few years, and that's why I couldn't recognize her. But she's still the same person if you look closely." After Zhou heard this, she suddenly remembered that 7th Su had promised to save Xiao Lanlan back then. She lamented, "Ugh, power and connections are annoying." Back then, when Xiao Lanlan was banished, I guess King Kong was able to save her. As expected in a backwater era, as long as you bribe someone to report her death, it'll be easy to fish her out of her exile. It looks like we have to remind King Rui. Otherwise, something bad might happen. When Zhou Huiming said this, he whispered Gu Shengrui's original words to him. "Xiao Lanlan is definitely harboring a deep hatred for us. I think we have to investigate this seriously. If it's not her, great. If it's her, there will be many things to uncover." After King Rui heard this, he grunted and asked someone to call Uncle Feng. After telling him what had happened, he said, "Get someone to monitor her first. If she did someone wrong, don't make a sound and fish out any accomplices of hers here." "I understand. I'll make the arrangements now." "Okay. Remember to be careful." After Uncle Feng left, King Rui stood up and said to Zhou Huiming, "Let's go. I have something to tell you." "Ah, does coming here count as me walking into a trap?" Zhou Huiming stood up reluctantly. Someone informed Uncle Feng that Xiao Lanlan had drugged Gu Wanning's chicken soup that afternoon. Uncle Feng was shocked and immediately rushed to the courtyard where Gu Wanning was staying. Just before Gu Wanning could drink her chicken soup, he immediately went forward and said, "Secondary consort, His Highness have something to say to you." Gu Wanning immediately put her bowl down and asked, "Uncle Feng, what instructions does His Highness have for me?" Chapter 598. Keeping tabs. Butler Feng didn't speak directly. Instead, he looked at Mrs. Sun and the others. Seeing this, Gu Wanning waved them out. Butler Feng didn't hide anything after that. He explained the matter and said, "I don't know what was added to this chicken soup, but it can't be drunk. Please think of a way to dispose of it and try to avoid making a fuss. We'll deal with her as soon as possible." Gu Wanning panicked momentarily, but she immediately calmed down and asked, "What about the other dishes?" Butler Feng noticed her steadiness and nodded with satisfaction. "The rest are fine. Only the chicken soup was spiked. Remember not to make a sound." Although the secondary consort was not the main wife, she still played a leading role. If something happened to the princess consort, she would have to take over, so having a steady personality was important. So far, Uncle Feng was quite satisfied with her attitude. "All right, they'll remember it. Please enjoy the rest of your meal." Uncle Feng responded, turned around, and walked out in a hurry. After he left, Gu Wanning looked at the chicken soup on the table with a regretful expression, but she did not continue to drink it. She pulled 2 strands of hair out and threw them into the chicken soup. Once Mrs. Sun returned, Gu Wanning refused to drink the chicken soup because she had found her hair and asked her to deal with it. When Mother Sun saw this, she said, "All right, leave it to me. I will drink it later." "Don't. There's hair in the soup, so who knows if there's anything else. It's better to be careful." Could it be that the princess consort deliberately arranged this? No, that would be too impatient of her. There's the risk of His Highness investigating. But what if? I don't think so. At most, this will just disgust me and won't have any effect. It will also just put me on alert. Just in case, I will prepare a silver needle later. After speaking, Mrs. Sun took the chicken soup away and disposed of it. Over the following half a month, Uncle Feng discovered that Xiao Lanlan would tamper with the soup of whoever His Highness had rested with the night before. Uncle Feng got someone to steal some medicine and planned to find someone to identify it. He ended up going to Gu Chungrui through Zhou Weiming's recommendation. Gu Chungrui did not reject the request. After testing it and confirming it was the same contraceptive medicine, he replied to Uncle Feng. After Uncle Feng received the news, he was extremely furious. This was related to King Rui's descendant, so he quickly informed him about it. When King Rui found out, his face was full of surprise. He could not figure out the other party's true intentions after that. So, he asked Uncle Feng to continue his surveillance. On the day Xiao Lanlan's medicine was finished, Xiao Lanlan found the servant she reported to and asked, "The medicine is used up again. What's the meaning of this? It's been so long, but the higher-ups still have yet to make a final decision. Am I going to continue like this? It'll definitely be exposed if this drags on. They'll report this matter to the higher-ups as soon as possible. You head back for now." The servant turned around and left quickly. Xiao Lanlan had no choice but to leave empty-handed. They both didn't notice a figure quietly following the servant until he returned to the dormitory to sleep. Soon, Uncle Feng received the news and immediately blamed himself. He did not expect that there would be more than one spy in the residence he was managing. How could he endure this? He said to the person, "Continue to monitor them. You 2 brothers, keep an eye on that servant and see who he contacts tomorrow. Remember, you are not allowed to alert them." "I understand," the person replied and turned to leave. Chapter 599. Make a move. The next day, in the afternoon, someone returned with a confirmation. After listening to it, Uncle Feng asked gravely, "Are you sure you didn't see it wrongly?" "I'm sure, but I didn't approach them as I feared being discovered. I didn't hear what they were saying." "All right, continue watching them," Uncle Feng said solemnly. At the same time, he knew it was within expectations. After all, a prince could not avoid these schemes. When King Rui returned that evening, Uncle Feng told him about this. "Your Highness, we found another servant last night through that woman. Today, the servant boy went out to get more medicine. The person who met him was 7th young Master Su's personal attendant. It looks like Gu Chengrui didn't get it wrong. That woman is indeed Xiao Lanlan. King Rui muttered and then asked, "They're still meeting after dinner tonight, right?" "Yes, he's handing over more medicine. When the time comes, let's go together and see what we can get out of them this time." "Yes, I will arrange for it now." After Butler Feng finished speaking, he turned around and left. King Rui went silent before muttering, "It seems that none of you can wait any longer. Fine, I will play with you." Xiao Lanlan finished her meal at night and again looked for the servant. What did the higher-ups say this time? It's time to take action. Remember, only use it on the princess consort. Afterwards, push the blame onto the secondary consort and let them fight each other. The servant instructed her as he gave her a bag of medicine. Xiao Lanlan reluctantly took it and asked, "What about me? Am I going to lose my life? Why don't you dare to act now that things have really come to this? Don't forget that your family died at the hands of King Rui. Aren't you indirectly avenging your family?" Xiao Lanlan gritted her teeth and silently agreed to this. She then said unwillingly, "I just can't accept it. You promised me to deal with Gu Chengrui and his wife. It's been so long, and there's still no result. I want to see their tragic ending. I already told you, this matter can't be rushed." Gu Chengrui now had the technology to build greenhouses and grow sweet potatoes. He's at the height of his power and is highly appreciated by the emperor. If we strike now, wouldn't we be causing trouble for our master? But soon, he's going to print his knowledge into a booklet. Once that's done, it would be the day they die. Fine, they'll wait a little longer. What are you waiting for? If I'm not mistaken, the princess consort will stay at His Highness' place tonight. We'll act tomorrow. Don't worry. Master will definitely make them die with you. Xiao Lanlan finally nodded and said, "All right, I hope you keep your word. Otherwise, I won't let you off even if I become a ghost. Remember to act tomorrow." The servant reminded her once again and turned to leave. However, he had only taken 2 steps when Guard Chu's sword stopped him. When the servant saw this, he knew that he had been exposed. He was shocked and quickly turned around to run into a tree. Xiao Lanlan panicked when she saw this, but a large sword was placed on her neck before she could run. The servant was also quickly pressed to the ground by Guard Chu. "Take him to the dungeon." After King Rui finished speaking, he turned around and stepped into the dungeon. When the servant saw King Rui, he knew he had no chance of survival. He opened his mouth and was about to bite his tongue to commit suicide. However, he was struck unconscious by Guard Chu's palm and dragged directly into the dungeon. After entering, he immediately gave the 2 of them a muscle relaxant and began interrogating them. Because King Rui knew who their master was, Xiao Lanlan quickly confessed that the medicine she had received this time was intended for sterilization. Chapter 600 Xiao Lanlan's death. The servant shouted angrily, "Ungrateful bitch, you ingrate! Master saved you and gave you a chance to take revenge. Yet this is how you repay him. You saved me? Don't forget, it was your master who used our Qiao family first. Otherwise, I would still be the eldest daughter of the Qiao family. Now, you're ordering me around and making me wait on people in the kitchen full of oil and smoke. Is this your definition of saving me?" Xiao Lanlan shouted angrily. "But master did save your life. Aren't you trying to kill me now?" "You." The servant didn't know how to respond to that statement. Seeing this, King Rui looked at Xiao Lanlan in surprise. He didn't expect her not to know that old Master Qiao had sided with the first prince. However, this was fine. It would be better to focus their attention on the 4th prince. They would be able to spill more secrets this way. He looked at Xiao Lanlan and said, "If he doesn't want to tell me, why don't you tell me? Tell me everything you know. They'll give you a quick death and a grand burial." Xiao Lanlan looked at him in surprise and asked, "Are you lying to me? Is there a need for me to lie to a dying person like you?" Xiao Lanlan revealed everything when she heard that. However, 7th Su no longer valued her after her elder brother died. Otherwise, he would not have let her be a maid at King Rui's residence. Therefore, she knew very little. She did, however, mention a piece of useful information. The famous brothel in the capital, Yixiang Courtyard, was the property of 7th Su. The crime of running a brothel was no lighter than the crime of dabbling in the loan shark business. Moreover, this was the largest brothel in the capital. This was very advantageous leverage. Is there anything else? King Rue asked again. Xiao Lanlan shook her head. King Rue then looked at the servant. This is your last chance, or it'll kill your entire family. I heard that it's a pity that your twins would have to die at only 8 months old, Uncle Feng said as he took out a pair of small silver locks with bells. When the servant saw the thing in his hand, his face was filled with disbelief. He thought he had hidden his identity very well but did not expect, at the thought of this, he suddenly felt that the remaining strength in his body had been sucked away. He looked at King Rue and asked, If I confess, can you spare my family? If you want them to live, you shouldn't be in a hurry to die. You should be thinking about how to cooperate with us and not let your master find out that something has happened to you. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to do anything, and your family would still die. The servant looked at him in shock and asked uncertainly, You want me to help you spy on them? Chapter 601 Showing Goodwill. After Gu Wanning said that, she took a towel from Chunks' hand and wiped her sweat. Sister, let's continue talking inside. All right. Sun Miaoka followed her into the house. After she sat down, Gu Wanning personally poured a cup of tea for the two of them and handed her a glass. Sister, please have some tea. Do take a seat. It's just the two of us. There's no need to be so polite. Sun Miaoka took the tea and said. At the same time, she was delighted with her attitude and hoped that it could continue. This way, she would at least have someone to talk to. Thank you, sister. Gu Wanning sat down after she finished speaking. I think you know the whole story of us being schemed against. I came here today with only one purpose. I hope that we can all be more vigilant in the future. If there were any suspicious people or things, I hope we could exchange information first. It's what I should do. We should also try our best to not cause any trouble for His Highness. Indeed, once the sea opens, His Highness will return to Dongyang. In the future, it's better for us to work together against the outside world. Yes, I will remember it. The two of them chatted for a while, more before Sun Miaoka left, satisfied. After she left, Chuanxi asked in confusion, Young miss, what does Princess Consort mean by this? Am a little confused? I feel that she is here to express goodwill. As long as we behave, she should not make things difficult for us. Mrs. Sun explained. She did not sense any malice from the princess consort either. Maybe she wants to find a helper. The imperial residence is filled with danger. If the two of us were to start quarreling, I'm afraid neither will end up well. Gu Wanning replied. Sun Miaoka would have to run such a large residence once His Highness left, and Gu Wanning assumed Sun Miaoka felt she was insufficient to face such a significant ordeal on her own. However, this was a good thing. She didn't want to fight either. As for His Highness' favor, it would depend on their own abilities. At night, the servant quietly left the residence and found Su Qing. How did it go? Su Qing quickly got up and asked. The servant shook his head. I'm not sure. She only ate a little, and Xiao Lanlan was found out and executed. I've already heard about this. How was she discovered? Perhaps she had poured too much of the medicine, and the princess consort tasted the bitterness, so she investigated all the way and found Xiao Lanlan. Fool, can't she make a strong soup to cover it up? You didn't expose yourself, did you? Su Qing asked. I don't think so. Otherwise, they would have arrested me long ago. It's better to be careful. Don't look for me for the time being. When I need you, they'll send someone to look for you. Su Qing turned around and walked toward the back door. The servant also stood up and walked out. After coming out, he looked around and returned to King Rui's residence openly. Su Qing waited for him to leave before returning. After he left, he circled the street a few times. After ensuring no one was following the servant boy, he turned around and left. After he left, a figure walked out from the opposite side and quickly returned to the imperial residence. Zhou Ying, who had been paying attention to their residence, finally heaved a sigh of relief. In the blink of an eye, it was time for a minor scholar exam, and Gu Chenglin was successfully admitted. In order to let him relax, Zhou took him to the manor for 3 days and taught him some farming knowledge. At this time, Gu Chenglin finally realized that farming was not just about farming. A lot of knowledge was involved, making him pay attention to agriculture-related knowledge. At the end of the month, King Kong married his wife. The 7th prince married his wife at the end of March, following the spring planting, particularly the planting of sweet potatoes. Chapter 602, Making Things Difficult. However, when the 7th prince married his wife, King Rui and Zhou Huaiming had already left for Dongyang province. Therefore, during the banquet, King Kong saw that Gu Chengrui was getting increasingly popular and began extending an olive branch to him. However, it wasn't working. Instead, he brought up Princess Pingyang, who had always supported him. Seeing this, Gu Chengrui didn't take the olive branch and instead laughed with him and said some words of gratitude to Princess Pingyang. He started praising Princess Pingyang, stating she was capable, fair, cared for him, and helped him marry a good wife. When King Kong saw this, he knew it would not be easy to win Gu Chengrui over quickly. Thus, he then followed suit, praising Princess Pingyang. On the female side, Zhou Jiaying saw Zhou glowing radiantly with happiness. In comparison, His Highness' attitude toward her only got colder. She was pissed. So, the flames of jealousy grew stronger and stronger. At this moment, Sun Miaoka suddenly retched, causing everyone to frown. The Empress Dowager thought of something and exclaimed happily, "Miaoka, are you pregnant?" Sun Miaoka was stunned for a moment after hearing this. It seemed to be true. However, even if it were true, it wasn't appropriate to spread it now, especially in front of the Empress. She could only shake her head and reply, "I think I caught a cold recently." The Empress Dowager didn't ask further after hearing this. Instead, she said, "You'd better be careful. After you return home, find a doctor to prescribe some medicine for you as soon as possible." "Yes, Imperial Grandmother. I will remember it." Sun Miaoka nodded. However, she still attracted the Empress' suspicious gaze, which made Sun Miaoka tremble in fear. It seemed that she would have to be more careful in the future. Zhou Jiaying was delighted by the opportunity. She looked at Zhou and said, "Speaking of pregnancy, Mrs. Gu, you and Lord Gu have been married for more than 4 years, no? Why hasn't there been any good news?" When everyone heard that, they all looked at her. Right, Zhou had been married for many years but did not have children yet. Suddenly, everyone started discussing whether she could not give birth. The Empress looked at Zhou Ying's bright and tender little face and knew she was living a comfortable life, which made her highly jealous. Thinking about the relationship between the two parties, since the Emperor did not allow her to touch Gu Chengrui, she could at least touch Zhou Ying. Thinking of this, she said, "This is a problem. If you can't give birth, you have to ask your husband to marry a concubine as soon as possible for the sake of having children. How about this? I have a distant niece who happens to be in the capital. Although her family is a little poor, she is delicate and pretty. I'll send her to your residence later to keep you company." Zhou Jiaying smiled and didn't say anything more. At this time, the Empress Dowager asked worriedly, "Zhou Ying, have you seen a doctor?" "Empress Dowager, my husband is a doctor and am in good health. It was just that there had been constant disasters over the past few years, so we decided to delay having children. He was too busy after coming to the capital, so we have been delaying further." Zhou Ying turned her head and replied, "That's not an excuse. No matter how busy Lord Gu is, he can never be busier than the Emperor." The Empress quipped in, "That's different. No matter how busy the Emperor is, he rarely leaves the palace. But my husband mostly lives in his greenhouse. How can it be the same?" "So, you are rejecting my good intentions. There's no need for that. We'll discuss this matter between us, husband and wife. Lord Gu is a meritorious minister of our dynasty. I can't watch him without an heir. I will personally take care of this matter." "Empress," the Empress Dowager coldly shouted. Chapter 603 Admonition. The Empress was startled by the Empress Dowager's shout. Looking at her gloomy face, she dared not make another sound. However, she was cursing the Empress Dowager internally. How dared the Empress Dowager humiliate her in front of so many people? Was she tired of living? Zhou smiled and nodded at the Empress Dowager to show her gratitude. She then lowered her head and continued eating. When she caught a glimpse of Zhou Jiaying's disappointed expression from the corner of her eye, Zhou knew what was going on. Zhou Jiaying was the one who started the dispute by claiming that she was infertile, and even the Empress had been used by her. Thinking of this, she huffed coldly. Since Zhou Jiaying didn't want a good life and insisted on finding trouble, don't blame her for retaliating. After the banquet ended, Gu Chungrui told Zhou about the fourth prince's olive branch on the way back and said, "I'm not sure what he'll do next. Be careful. I guess there is no tacit understanding between them, husband and wife." Zhou retold how Zhou Jiaying made things difficult for her. In the future, if King Kong comes looking for you again, you can use her as an excuse and let them fight each other. It's a good idea. Let's give them a taste of their own medicine and stir up the Kong imperial residents. On the other side, after returning to the palace, the Empress Dowager called the Empress into her palace and questioned her. "Do you still remember your identity?" As the Empress. The Empress was shocked by that question before replying. "I thought you didn't remember. Although Gu Chungrui is an official of the Ming dynasty, he is not a slave of the Yang family. What right do you have to interfere in other people's family affairs? Even after she rejected you, you still tried to use your power to force her. How do you want everyone to think of you? How do you want them to think of our royal family?" I know her mistake. I just didn't expect Zhou to not give me any face at all, so I just got angry. But did you give them face? She initially rejected you tactfully, but you insisted on arranging a concubine for them. If it were you, would you be willing? The Empress Dowager sighed and continued tiredly. The position of Empress does have a lot of power, but it also has a lot of restrictions. This is because your words and actions represent the royal family's attitude. You must consider the bigger picture and not act recklessly based on your personality. Another thing is that being a mother to the country doesn't mean you're actually their mother, but it's a saying that you should be a role model for all the women and lead them well. I understand. Go back and think about this carefully. Your attitude will, at the very least, affect the prestige of the Emperor and King Hui. After the Empress Dowager finished speaking, she waved her hand to let her out. After the Empress had left, Nanny Lu asked, "Empress Dowager, isn't that too harsh? I'm afraid that the Empress will hate you." "She hates me already. Ever since she was grounded, she's always been moody. If she weren't scolding one person, she would be scolding another. Her temperament is really too different from Empress Zhou's." The Empress Dowager sighed. Unfortunate. After Nanny Lu heard this, her heart ached for the Empress Dowager. If she cared too much, the Emperor would suspect her of taking control. If she cared too little, everything would look terrible on her. She was stuck in a dilemma. After the Empress left the Empress Dowager's palace, she was so furious that her face turned green. This time, however, she did not flare up again. There was one sentence that she had taken to heart, which was that her attitude represented King Hui. She could not embarrass her son and needed to wait for him to return and discuss another big plan. Thinking of this, she asked her substitute nanny, "Nanny you, oh right, how long has it been since King Hui sent a letter?" Chapter 604 The Reaction of All Sides. It's been almost a month, and the river embankment should be almost completed. Perhaps His Highness is already on his way back. The Empress did not reply after hearing this. Instead, she said, "Pick out 2 young and beautiful palace maids. Mistress, this matter can't continue. Otherwise, the Empress Dowager, just prepare it. It will be useful sooner or later." Yes. After hearing this, Nanny Yu did not try to persuade her. After sending the Empress back to the palace, she began to search for beautiful palace maids. After the Emperor learned of the Empress' foolish actions, his impression of her dropped again. It had even accumulated into disappointment. If it weren't for the fact that he couldn't easily get rid of her, he he would have done so long ago. However, Gu Chungrui had been married for more than 4 years and still had no children. He was concerned, and he was considering asking about it. He called Xiao Heng in and asked him to pass on the message to his trusted aide in the southwest. He wanted to win over the morale of the Southwest Army as soon as possible. On the other side, after returning to the mansion, Zhou Jiaying told King Kong about the dispute between Zhou Ying and the Empress. This Zhou Ying is really bold. Even we didn't dare to contradict the Empress, but she did so regardless. It can't be that there's really something wrong with her, and she became angry from embarrassment after being exposed? King Kong asked thoughtfully. If that were the case, he would know how to rope Gu Chungrui in. I can't say for sure. Zhou Jiaying didn't make any unnecessary remarks after seeing that he had considered her words. Your Highness, do you want to see Exant? Tonight. I still have some things to deal with. King Kong turned around and walked toward the study afterward. Zhou Jiaying smiled, then turned around and went back to her courtyard. After watching them from afar, Lu Yi, Hong Suzi's maid, commented unhappily, Mistress, this secondary consort is always pestering His Highness. She's really shameless. Who cares? My status still maintains. As long as my father doesn't fall, His Highness won't dare to neglect me. After Hong Suji finished speaking, she turned around and returned to the main courtyard. She had seen the relationship between His Highness and Zhou Jiaying along the way and knew they were once a close couple. However, she found this was not the case after entering the residence. At the very least, His Highness was not as infatuated with Zhou Jiaying as she had imagined. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so obedient and gentle to Hong Suji. However, the more he acted like this, the more she dared not give him her heart. Otherwise, she would end up worse than Zhou Jiaying. She had to remain rational. At the very least, she would not implicate her family. Then, while King Kong was still patient with her, she had to bear a son as soon as possible to have a firm foothold in this residence. After Sun Miaoka left the 7th prince's residence, she didn't return directly to her place. Instead, she turned around and went to the Sun family's residence to find a doctor to take her pulse. She was really pregnant. After sending off the doctor, Mother Sun smiled and said, That's great. Otherwise, your status will be in danger if Gu Wanning gives birth to the eldest son. It's just as dangerous now. Sun Miao replied nervously. What's going on? Are you talking about Gu Wanning? Mother Sun wanted to say something but hesitated. After spending time with her, Gu Wanning is a good person. She doesn't have any bad intentions. Sun Miaoka shook her head. But it's hard to say for the others. At that point, she told her mother about how the 4th prince had sent someone into the residence to give her and Gu Wanning contraceptives. She added, Today, when everyone was happy about the news, only the Empress strangely looked at me. I think it won't be easy to give birth to this child successfully. After this busy period, I will naturally have one when we settle down. Besides, the Gu family doesn't have any inheritance now. It's fine even if we don't have children. The emperor was startled when he heard this and asked, Do you blame me? Gu Chungrui was stunned by the question. After understanding that he was referring to the family's exile, he shook his head. Not really. After all, the Gu family was at fault. You acted according to the law. The emperor saw that his eyes were clear and did not dodge his question. He smiled and asked, So, who do you think is most suitable to inherit the throne among the princes? This is your family matter, so I shouldn't say much. Family matters? Humph, family matters it is. What kind of person do you think I should choose to inherit the throne? Gu Chungrui looked at him in surprise, not knowing what the emperor was trying to do. Therefore, he answered modestly, Someone who thinks about the people. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. I'm afraid an emperor who doesn't have the hearts of the people won't be able to last for long. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize it. The emperor muttered to himself. A moment later, he waved his hand and said, Since there's nothing wrong with you two, have a child as soon as possible so we can shut everyone up. Chapter 606 Making a Move on Him, I Will Take My Leave. After Gu Chungrui finished speaking, he turned around and walked out. Behind him, the emperor looked at his back, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's too late to stand by the side now. As soon as Gu Chungrui stepped out of the palace gates, he bumped into King Kong again. A trace of impatience flashed across Gu Chengrui's eyes, but he still went forward and bowed. Greetings, King Kong. There's no need to be so polite. King Kong helped him and asked, I heard from my secondary consort about yesterday's matter. She did not do it on purpose. Please don't blame her. It's just a quarrel. There's no blame. If your highness has nothing else, I will be heading home for breakfast. Why don't we go to my residence for breakfast? We're cousins, after all. We haven't had a proper meal together yet. When our restaurant opens, we can have a good gathering there. I still have to go to the manor after breakfast. You don't need to be busy with the manor. Just leave it to the servants. Have you forgotten my current position? I research agriculture. If I don't keep an eye on it, how can I research them? King Kong was a little unhappy when he saw that Gu Chungrui wouldn't budge. He reluctantly replied, All right, let's talk another day. I will take my leave. Gu Chungrui cupped his fists and bowed before turning around to leave. At the same time, his face darkened. All parties were making a move on him, using their lack of children as an excuse. He had to be more careful in the future. After returning home and having breakfast, he told Zhouing about this matter and said, You should be careful. Don't fall into their trap. I understand. Don't you think it's time for us to have a child? To be honest, now that King Rue is not around, it's time to be vigilant. It is not a suitable time. That's right. King Hui is probably coming back soon, too. Once he returns, there will definitely be a commotion. Let's wait a little longer. Yeah, I'll go out with you today to look at the new manor and see how Uncle Fong is doing there. Let's go together. Wait a minute, and let me change my clothes. Zhouing returned to her room and changed into a clean set of clothes before heading out with him. First, Gu Chungrui went to his usual manor, and then Shizhu drove the carriage to the new manor. Halfway there, Zhouing saw Gu Chengrui's notebook and had no choice but to head back and deliver it to him. At the same time, she made up her mind to buy a carriage soon. Otherwise, if something happened, it would be inconvenient to have only one carriage. After arriving at the manor, Zhouing lifted the curtain when a mouthful of soil hit her. The wind was so strong that she could not open her eyes. Shizhu wasn't faring any better, but still handed her bamboo hat over. Madam, the wind is too strong. It's better for you to wear it. Zhouing returned to the inside of the carriage. Under the table cover, she took a scarf from her interspace and covered her face. After getting out of the carriage, she raised her head and saw everyone busy building houses. She turned and asked Shizhu to tie the carriage down before walking inside with her. A row of brand-new brick dormitories had been built, with new cow, sheep, pig, and chicken pens also completed. They were now building a warehouse. Madam, you're here. I thought I saw the wrong person. Head Fong walked over and greeted her. I'm here to check on the progress. When is it expected to be completed? In another 10 days. The warehouse must be built firmly, and we can't be careless. Chapter 607 Planning 1. Zhouing nodded in agreement. Great. Speed is important, but not at the cost of quality. You keep an eye on them. They'll make rounds, and we'll talk in detail after that. Do you need someone to accompany you? No need. It's fine as long as Shizhu follows me. All right, the wind is strong. You two be careful. Head Fong turned around and left. Zhouing brought Shizhu to check on the construction progress. Many stones were deeply embedded in the ground because no one had cared for this manor for years. There were many peach trees expanding over 200 acres, but the rest of the land was rugged and barren. Even Shizhu, who had never worked in the fields before, could see that this land was barren. She could not help but ask, Madam, I'm afraid this land won't work. Was Master deceived into buying this place? With the price of wasteland, what good land can you buy? Besides, I don't plan to grow crops. I plan just to plant grass. Plant grass and raise livestock? Yes, we can harvest a lot of grass in such a large area, as long as we can use it reasonably, Zhouing replied while looking around. She walked into the peach plantation and took a good look at them. Perhaps because of the many disasters over the years, all the peach trees were not in good condition. The seedlings were basically all dead and could be broken with just one hand. More than half of the adult trees were also dead. Although those still alive had bloomed flowers, very few bore fruit. Also, there was a lot of peach resin covering the tree. No wonder they did not mention peach trees when they sold the land. To put it bluntly, they were worthless. It was fine, as Zhouing could dig them up and repurpose the land. There was a river in front of the peach plantation. The river was deep and wide, and it looked very clear. She could build a water wheel here, which would be convenient for the manor. Madam, look, there are fish in this river, and they're not the small ones. Shizhu pointed at a spot and said. Zhouing spread out her divine senses and looked into the river. There were quite some fish, most of which she had released from her interspace. They were not on alert and were gathering in the water weeds. It may be because there were not many people here, so they lived quite comfortably. She said, go back and tell Uncle Fong they can fish them up when they have time. These can be distributed to the employees. Unfortunately, we didn't bring a net with us. Otherwise, we could have fished them up now. Well, we can just bring it with us the next time we come. Let's go. We should head back since we're done surveying the place. They entered Headfang's dormitory, and Headfang immediately ran over and asked, Madam, do you want to have lunch here? No, it's all right. We'll need to head back soon. Zhouing answered and saw a pen and paper on the table. She took the piece of paper and quickly outlined the general appearance of the manor. She planned out a few areas and said, when the time comes, we'll need to cut down this peach plantation and plant a total of 1,000 acres of grass. As for the seeds, they'll give them to you later. Remember to leave a few walking paths in the middle for easy care. After the summer harvest, if there were red sweet potatoes or white potato seedlings, they could also be planted. It will improve the soil quality, and the sweet potatoes could still grow back after harvesting them twice. On this side of the grass field, they'll try to find some soybean and peanut seeds to plant them. They can be used to nourish the land, and they are also great for providing tofu and oil for the restaurant. Further down is going to be the vegetable garden. Some fruit trees might also be planted here, so remember to put more fertilizer here and plow deeply. We'll get someone to install a water wheel later. It'll be much more convenient to water everything this way. Chapter 608 Planning 2. Headfang laughed when he heard that. A water wheel? That's great. With a water wheel, we can save a lot of energy. Yes, remember to plan the canal well. Otherwise, it will be difficult to water our crops. Don't worry, madam. I'm good at this. Good. 10 days later, they'll get people to transport the livestock and seedlings here. Remember to find some experienced people to take care of them. Otherwise, once a disease infects the livestock, they would all be destroyed. Madam, I really don't have anyone I can trust when it comes to raising livestock. Don't worry about this. We'll look for someone capable. You just have to plan the manor well and as soon as possible. Zhouing gave him 1,000 silver notes and added, buy a few cattle and farming tools. We must get the manor up and running before the autumn harvest. I will remember it. Okay, we'll head inside for now. If there's anything, remember to send a message. Zhouing brought Shizhu back to the manor. After lunch, she went to the fields with the others to plant some seedlings. After returning home at night, Zhouing climbed onto her soft couch and was too tired even to move her hands. Gu Chengrui saw this, washed his hands, and massaged her, saying, farming crops with sweat dripping into the soil isn't just a saying. This is a real farm, different from farming in your inner space. So, please don't head out to the farms in the future. It makes my heart ache. The main problem is that this work is too tiring for my waist. Oh, you'll know when you wake up tomorrow. Hunching over is bad for your body, too. Gu Chengrui then said, oh right, the sweet potatoes can be eaten soon. How many of them should we save up? Didn't King Rui request some sweet potato seedlings? Let's harvest them all, let everyone taste them, and plant whatever we have left in our manor. That's fine too. Otherwise, more than half of the manor's fields would be empty. Why don't we plant all the watermelons on the empty land, especially giant pumpkins that could feed cattle, sheep, and pigs? It could save us a lot of feed. Sure, take out the seeds at night. Gu Chungrui nodded in agreement. After finishing her work at night, Zhouing prepared half a sack of seeds and handed it to Gu Chungrui. Just as she was about to bring him out of the space, Gu Chungrui grabbed her and said, "I've prepared a medicinal bath for you. Go over and take a good bath. Otherwise, you won't be able to get out of bed tomorrow." "Let's go together." Zhou Ying agreed. All right. Gu Chungrui walked into the bathroom with her. Despite having soaked in a medicinal bath, Zhou Ying awoke the next day feeling sore and unpleasant, particularly the tendons from the back of her legs to the soles of her feet. She did some yoga on the bed and stretched her muscles before getting up. After breakfast, she called a guard and went to the horse market to buy a relatively luxurious carriage. Just as they were about to leave the market, someone suddenly shouted, Mrs. Gu, wait for me." Zhou Ying turned her head to look. She paused momentarily before remembering that he was the middleman who had helped her purchase her shop. She asked the guards to park the carriage, got off the carriage, and waited at the side. When he approached them, she smiled and asked, "Manager Xiao, are you also here to buy horses?" "A carriage. My previous carriage broke down, so I'm considering buying a new one. I wonder if your residence is still lacking helpers?" Manager Xiao asked. "Where did you get the new people from?" Same old, from the same friend last time." "What's their background?" "Some of them are disaster refugees, and some of them are slaves sold from the south." "From the south? Did they commit a crime?" Chapter 609 Newcomers 1. It is as you predicted, but most of them are implicated by the main family's crimes. I know your requirements well, and most of them are in line with your conditions. This was why I called out to you. Sure, let's go over and take a look. Yes. You can decide once you think they're suitable. Let's go. Zhou Ying got into her carriage after that. However, Manager Xiao didn't get in with her. Instead, he sat beside the carriage driver and began to show the way. After some time, they stopped outside a small courtyard in the northern district. After getting out of the carriage, the guard stood outside to take care of the carriage while Zhou Ying followed Manager Xiao into the small courtyard. After some pleasantries, Zhou Ying decided on two families after a series of selections. One of them was a butler in his 40s. He had a wife and two children who had just come of age. They were both in their prime. The other family was a gardener, and his wife used to be in charge of managing a small team. They had two daughters, one 12 and the other 8. Although the two families were both from the south, they had different masters. Furthermore, Zhou Ying bought 4 more maidservants, as she knew they would be short of hands once they got busy. After signing the servant contracts, she paid the silver and returned to her residence. When she reached home, she asked Mother Chiu to settle them down. Once the newcomers finished eating their first meal, she called everyone to the backyard garden. She first let the people in the residence introduce themselves so that the newcomers could get to know them. Once that was done, only the newcomers introduced themselves. "We'll go first." The man who used to be a butler spoke out. "My name is Niu Fugue. I used to be a butler in the home of a magistrate in the south. More than a month ago, my master's house was raided by the government, and all the servants were sold." He pointed to his wife and introduced her. "This is my wife, Mrs. Jiang. She was the nanny of our previous young miss and in charge of managing her courtyard. My daughter is Niu Lirong, the servant girl of our previous young miss. My son, Niu Deli, had learned accounting from an accountant but had never been an official disciple. However, he still had no problem with general bookkeeping. My name is Miao Daji, a gardener in our local justice court. My wife, Mrs. Liang, was originally a chef specializing in making noodles. We have 2 daughters. The older one is called Miao Xiaoyu, and the younger one is Miao Xiaoxue." When it was the remaining 4 maidservants' turn, the 4 stepped forward together and requested, "Mistress, please give us a new name." Zhouing struggled internally after hearing that, as she was terrible at naming. She took a good look at the four of them and replied, "All right, according to your current position, from east to west, it's Chuanxiang, Xiaxiang, Qiuxiang, and Dongxiang. If I remember correctly, Chuanxiang and Dongxiang know how to cook. You guys can work in the kitchen with Mrs. Liang. Niu Lirong, Xiaxiang, and Qiuxiang will stay and serve in the main courtyard. Mrs. Jiang would be Mother Qiu's assistant and manage all the affairs in the residence. As for Niu Fugue, he could take care of the front yard while Miao Daji could lead others to trim the flowers and plants in the manor. Miao Xiaoyu and Miao Xiaoxue, do you want to cook? If you want to, I can arrange for you to learn in the kitchen." "Can I? I would like to follow my mother and learn how to make noodles." Miao Xiaoxue raised her head and asked in surprise. "Of course, go ahead to the kitchen to help out." Zhouing then looked at Miao Xiaoyu. "I like gardening, so I want to learn more gardening from my father." Miao Xiaoyu stole a glance at Miao Daji after she finished speaking. Zhouing looked at Miao Daji's darkened face and asked, "Is there anything wrong? My father said that gardeners are all men. It's too tiring for a woman to do it, so. Miao Xiaoyu stuttered and shut her mouth. Chapter 6, 10 Newcomers, 2. Zhouing looked at Miao Daji in surprise. Although she didn't know why he rejected Miao Xiaoyu, she didn't want to kill a child's interest. Therefore, she advised him, although there is a saying that you should love what you do, if you don't have a strong passion for it, you will be a layman for the rest of your life and never reach the level of a master. However, if she's really passionate about her career, she would wholeheartedly devote her life to research and creating something new. It would also give her a happier life. Taking the easiest example, cooking. If a person is passionate about cooking, even if she doesn't have the talent, she would devote her entire being to learning it. She would also actively study and create new dishes. However, without a deep passion, she would just learn the bare minimum and not be interested in improving herself. No matter how talented she would be in that field, she would be average. Therefore, if a child wants to learn something, we should encourage them. Only after learning would the child know if it was suitable for them. If she can really learn well in the future, how about I make a flower bed for her? Miao Daji pondered for a moment and looked at Miao Xiaoyu. Are you sure you want to learn gardening? After you start, you can't give up halfway. I want to learn. Miao Xiaoyu's eyes lit up. All right, from tomorrow onwards, you'll follow me. Miao Daji nodded. All right, I'll tell you all my requirements. Zhouing smiled. I only have 2 requirements for you all. One is loyalty. There is only one outcome to betraying your master, and that is to live a life worse than death. The second is diligence and neatness. I won't punish those who slack off. They'll only deduct your monthly salary. It'll be 100 coppers per discovery, and there's no limit to that. In other words, if this month's salary isn't enough to cover your deduction, your next month's salary will be deducted until you get diligent. Butler Niu and Mother Qiu will keep an eye on everyone in the future. Of course, I'm not inhumane. If you're really sick, you can take a sick leave and not get their monthly salary deducted for the day. Yes, mistress. Niu Fugue and Mother Qiu replied at the same time. All right, get to work. Niu Deli, come with me. After Zhouing finished speaking, she led him to the main courtyard. Niu Deli was surprised by her beckoning and followed, Zhouing nervously. When they arrived at the main courtyard, Zhouing brought him directly to her study and took out an account book. This is the account book I keep. Take a look and record our accounts in this format in the future. It's also convenient for me to check the accounts. Niu Deli finally let out a sigh of relief. He was still afraid that Zhouing would have an opinion of him, but it turned out that she wanted to test him. He took the account book and looked at it seriously. After a moment, his eyes lit up because Zhou Ying's tabulated accounting method was simple and clear to understand. Not only was it easy to remember, but it was also very convenient to calculate the final bill. After studying carefully, he replied, Mistress, I'll remember this method. From today onwards, I will strictly follow your format. Zhouing nodded and took out some more account books. These are all the accounts in the residence. Go back and study it and make a budget for next month. I understand, Yes, give me an answer in 3 days. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. Remember, you only have one chance. I hope you can seize it firmly. Yes, I will do my best to finish my apprenticeship as soon as possible, Nyo Deli answered and picked up the account books, leaving quickly to study them. After he left, Zhouing asked Shizhu to call Kuehua over. She told Kuehua, later, choose the same materials you are wearing and make 2 sets of spring clothes for each newcomer. In addition, Niu Lirong will be in charge of serving tea. As for Xiaxiang and Xiuxiang, you can make arrangements for their designation. They'll leave this courtyard to you in the future. I hope you'll take responsibility and don't disappoint me. Chapter 611, Knocking on Their Doors, Thank you for your appreciation. Mistress. Kuehua immediately bowed. Previously, when Niu Lirong was assigned to the main courtyard, she feared her job would be taken over. It seemed that she was overthinking it. Managing people is different from managing things. You must reward and punish clearly, use firm yet diplomatic methods, and be fair and just. I hope you can get everyone in the courtyard settled down as soon as possible. Otherwise, they'll have no choice but to get someone else to do it. Do you understand? Yes, I will make arrangements as soon as possible. After she was done with arranging everyone, Zhouing returned to her room. Niu Lirong brought her a cup of tea as soon as she sat down. Zhouing raised her head and said, in the future, if I don't ask for tea, there's no need to serve it. Just prepare a cup of water. It will do. Yes, mistress. Niu Lirong's body stiffened momentarily before she carefully stood to the side. You don't have to be nervous. I'm just letting you know my preference. What were you best at when caring for your previous young miss? Zhouing asked. Preparing tea and makeup. Zhouing understood that she must have previously been the young girl's confidant. She continued to ask, have you learned simple ingredient theories, such as what foods go well with each other, or the identification of poisons and so on? No, I have only learned what kind of constitution or season would be suitable for drinking what kind of tea. All right, they'll leave serving tea to you in the future. Remember to check everything carefully before making tea, just in case. I understand. You may leave. Zhouing dismissed her, opened the teacup, and took a look. It was chrysanthemum tea. Brewing a good cup of tea is an art. Compared to the tea she usually simply brewed, it was better in taste and color. After drinking it, Zhouing got up and went to her study. She took out a few books from her inner space about what plants were suitable for growing in various soil types and picked out those for the alkali-type soil. Turning back to Shanghe village. After half a year of hard work, Constable Zhang finally got to marry Gu Zi. Today was the day of their engagement. At the same time, the date of their wedding was also set. After the pleasantries, the patriarch sent him and the matchmaker away. When he was about to turn around and head home, he saw a carriage enter the village from afar. The patriarch remembered that Manager Liu was here for their sweet potato seedlings, so he immediately went up to greet them with a smile. He was stunned when he saw the unfamiliar coachman. Just as he was about to turn around and walk back, he suddenly heard someone call him father. He turned his head and looked over. When he saw who it was, his face darkened, and he replied in a strange tone, Yo, isn't this County Magistrate Qin Peng? I don't deserve to be your father, nor do I dare to be one. If you are here for work-related matters, go to the village chief. If it's for personal matters, you're not welcome. Z has remarried, and there's no longer any connection between you two. What? Z has remarried? Qin Peng asked in astonishment. Why are you surprised? You two have already divorced, so she's free to remarry. Isn't it normal for her to remarry when she meets a suitable person? Hurry up and leave. Otherwise, don't blame me for gathering my clansmen to kick you out. After the patriarch finished speaking, he flung his sleeves and headed home. Seeing this, Qin Peng hurriedly chased after him, but he was still a step too late. The door was shut in his face by the patriarch. Father, please listen to my explanation. Qin Peng immediately knocked hurriedly on the door. The patriarch roared before he could finish his words. Get lost? Everyone in the house was shocked by his shouts and immediately rushed out, especially Gu Zi, who felt she was hallucinating. Was that the bastard Chen Peng's voice? Husband, who is it outside? Why is he calling you his father? Mrs. Wang walked over and asked. Chapter 6:12 Dream On, it's Chen Peng. When the patriarch said this, he saw Gu Zi. Zi, take the two children back to the house. Leave the rest to us. Because he knew clearly that he couldn't let Chen Peng keep shouting outside. Otherwise, if the Zhang family found out, it would be bad for Zi's reputation. After hearing this, Mrs. Wang glared at the patriarch and looked at Gu Zi. Zi, tell me what you think of this. He's just a familiar stranger. We can just kick him out. Gu Zi gritted her teeth and replied. She had not forgotten the pain she had suffered back then. If Gu Chengrui had not helped her, she would have been a pile of dirt by now. Therefore, there was no love between them anymore. There was also no hatred, only indifference. After saying that, she took her two children to the west wing. After the patriarch let Chen Peng in, she brought her two children back to her house. On the way, Huan hesitated to speak. Mother, is my father here? Yes. Do you want to see him? If you want to see him, we can head back. Gu Zi asked nervously. To be honest, she didn't want them to meet. Chen Peng only cared about his career and never once cared about the two children. She was afraid that they would get hurt by meeting him. However, she was afraid that her children would blame her in the future if she refused to let them meet their father, so the final decision was up to them. Huan hesitated for a moment before he shook his head. No, I still remember that he sent someone to kill us. Yes, we shouldn't meet him. Let's go home. Gu Zi smiled and patted her head as she walked home. As for Lele, although she was young, she remembered clearly that Mrs. Zhao almost killed her. She also remembered that her father only cared about coaxing her younger brother and always ignored her. Therefore, she immediately followed Gu Zi when she heard they were returning home. Gu Zi was relieved when she saw this. On the other end, after the patriarch let Chen Peng into the house, he did not even pour him a cup of water. Instead, he asked directly, Speak. What is it? If you're done, leave quickly. We don't welcome you. As for the others, they all stared at him like tigers eyeing their prey, as if they would beat him up if he didn't get along. Especially Mrs. Wang, who really wanted to tear him apart. She remembered clearly what her daughter looked like when she returned that year. Later on, this bastard even sent a thug to almost ruin Gu Zi's reputation. Chen Peng looked at his family's hostile attitude. It would be a lie to say he was not afraid. However, for the sake of his future, he could only bite the bullet and say, I came over to reconcile with Zi. However, since she had already remarried, I would take the two children back with me. Zi could also live better in her husband's house that way. Dream on. Gu Chunjin coldly snorted. They are not 3-year-old children. You sent people to kill them time and time again. Do you think they will go back with you? The patriarch asked sarcastically. No, I didn't. You didn't send anyone over personally, but do you dare to say that you don't know about it? After speaking, the patriarch stood up and added coldly, Don't quibble when all you have to do to prove your innocence is to follow me to the Mother Goddess temple and swear you don't know. Do you dare to do that? Chen Peng's heart froze when he heard that. Mother God appearing at the capital's execution ground and striking down lightning spread throughout the Ming dynasty. How could he dare to go to the Mother God temple to swear his innocence? He looked at the furious Gu family and knew that it was impossible for him to have anything to do with them if he did not do something. Chapter 6:13 No way Chen Peng immediately knelt and kowtowed. It was my mistake before, and I didn't stop Mrs. Zhao from doing what she did. Please forgive me. From now on, I will definitely turn over a new leaf and treat the two children well. The patriarch immediately kicked him in the chest and spat. You didn't stop her, but you must have been involved, no? Don't think I don't know that you instigated the refugees to cause trouble in Dongyang. Lord Sun still has the confessions of those people from back then. Should I go and look through them? After Chen Peng fell to the ground, a trace of ruthlessness flashed across his eyes. He did not expect them to know so much. So, this time, the patriarch did not give him a chance to speak. Let me guess, why did you lower yourself to visit us this time? Because the Zhao family can't help you anymore, right? Because someone is investigating you, right? You want the three of them back now because you want Cheng Rui to help you get through this calamity on their account, right? I've seen many shameless people in my life, but it's rare to see someone as shameless and self-righteous as you. Are you still worthy of being a man? Back then, the Gu family sponsored you to take the imperial examination and later helped you in your career. Didn't they do their best? Once something happened to the Gu family, your attitude changed faster than flipping a page in a book. Yes, we've become sinners. You're afraid of being implicated, and we understand that. So, we won't make things difficult for you. Even when you divorced Z, we didn't say anything. However, the only thing you should have never done was allow Mrs. Zhao and your shameless mother to humiliate and endanger them. Do you even think with your brain? Now that you need them and want them to help you, do you only want to reconcile? I'm telling you, no way. You should leave. Otherwise, don't blame us for taking action. Gu Qinjin opened the door at this moment. Get lost. Mrs. Wang got up and wanted to drag him out. When the patriarch saw this, he immediately stopped her because he knew that Chen Peng was a person who cared greatly about his reputation. Moreover, he was cold-blooded, heartless, and ruthless. If they really dragged him out and made him lose his dignity, Chen Peng would bite them before he died. It wasn't worth it. He ordered Chen Peng, leave. We're not stupid. We won't let you use us again and again. Don't come back again. The Gu family will no longer acknowledge you as a relative. Seeing that there was no room for redemption, Chen Peng did not stand on ceremony. He stood up and patted the dust off his clothes before walking out. At the same time, he was thinking about how to repay their humiliation today. Look at his heartless behavior. Now that there's no hope, he just leaves without saying a word. I can't believe I was that blind back then to actually let Z marry him. Z is now scarred for the rest of her life. Mrs. Wang roared and started crying. All right, it's already in the past. Z has already walked out of her trauma, and there's no need to think about those unhappy things anymore. Go over later and ask Z to stay at home for a while. We'll talk more after he leaves. The patriarch suggested. Yes, that bastard is cunning. We have to be on guard. After Mrs. Wang wiped her tears, she ran out. However, she did not go directly to Gu Zi's house. Instead, she went to the foot of the mountain to buy some incense and candles. She then entered the Mother God Temple and lit 3 incense sticks to pray for Gu Zi and her 2 children's safety. Before she left, she even donated a tael of silver. Sigh. The Gu family really doesn't have a good eye for choosing a son-in-law. Every one of them is more ruthless than the other. Third, and even lost her life. Gu Qinjin sighed. Chapter 6:14. Paying close attention. What are you talking about? Aren't the others quite decent? Look at how capable Zishang's husband, Hu Chun, is. The patriarch glared at him unhappily. Indeed, the external environment is also very important in influencing their attitude. If nothing had happened to the Gu family, their lives would have been glorious. We were just unfortunate that those sons-in-law were less than decent, Gu Chengxi added. What do you mean by just less than decent? To put it bluntly, they just despise the poor and love the rich. Go on with your day. I have to go to the fields and water the white potatoes. The patriarch dismissed everyone and went to the fields. However, he wasn't in the mood to work when he reached the fields. He sat near the fields and looked at the crops from afar. Uncle, why are you sitting here? Are you okay? Gu Chengxi saw him sitting in the distance and immediately ran over to ask. It's fine. I'm just old and tired. I can't compare to your youngster's energy. Why didn't you go to town today? The patriarch asked. Didn't manager Sun mention that the restaurant would be opened after the wheat harvest? So we took the opportunity to plant more chilies and cumin. I came back to see if it was time to water them. You're the only male left at home. Remember to let us know if you can't handle the workload. I know, uncle, but I've hired people to take care of it, and am just here to take a look. By the way, do you still have cumin seeds at home? I think they're easy to take care of. I think so, but I'm unsure how much we have. I'll ask my mom when I get back. It's fine. I'll ask her myself later. All right then. If there's no problem, I have to go down to the fields now. Go ahead. After he left, the patriarch also got up and went to work. At night, Gu Chungrui did not come back. Zhouing finished her meal quickly and brought a piece of subpar bread to the front yard to feed the fish. At the same time, she spread out her divine sense to observe the situation of the newcomers in the residence. Miao Daji's family was well behaved. They ate, worked, and slept without any distractions. The Niu family expressed their views on their new master. Although they felt that the family's foundation was slightly thin, they were still satisfied that they could return to their original position. Chuanxiang and Dongxiang had worked in the kitchen before, so they quickly adapted to their current tasks. Although they didn't talk much, they got along very well with everyone. Qiuxiang, the most talkative and lively, was very curious about Gu Chungrui. She constantly asked Kuei-hua about him. However, Kuei-hua didn't usually talk much and was also tight-lipped. She only revealed shallow information and didn't say anything else. It was Xiaxiang, who did not talk much, who caught Zhou Ying's attention. This was because Xiaxiang would listen incredibly intently whenever Gu Chungrui was mentioned. Zhou Ying remembered how Xiaxiang had introduced herself before. Xiaxiang mentioned that she was a second-class servant girl who served the main wife of her previous family. She was also responsible for delivering news to the main wife. Was it in Xiaxiang's nature to pay attention to this information, or did she have other motives? Zhou Ying knew she had to pay more attention to her. After talking about Gu Chungrui, Qiuxiang changed the topic and asked, Sister Kuei-hua, is Shizhu the mistress' personal maid? I often see the mistress bring her along everywhere. No, mistress doesn't have a personal maid. It would be more appropriate to say that Sister Shizhu is her guard. She only followed the mistress during the day and would head back to her room to sleep at night. Don't we need to keep watch at night? There's no need. Ever since I came, mistress hasn't ordered anyone to stay guard overnight. Kuei-hua then warned them, "Oh right, don't go into their bedroom without mistress' permission. Mistress doesn't like strangers entering their bedroom." Chapter 6:15. A list of the dead mistress is so special. Maybe it has something to do with their experience, as mistress herself has always taken care of their bedroom. Kuei-hua then asked, "Oh, what are you two good at?" "Am skilled in needlework and was previously in charge of my young miss clothes," Qiuxiang replied. "Am not particularly skilled in anything, but I do have a good memory. I was previously in charge of running errands and passing messages," Xiaxiang explained. "All right, Qiuxiang will be in charge of master and mistress clothes. Remember, just the outer clothes are enough, as mistress will prepare their underwear. As for Xiaxiang, you can start with the odd jobs and preparing meals for master and mistress. When we have a more suitable place for you in the future, they'll recommend you to mistress." After that, Zhou Ying listened to them chat for a while before leaving. After feeding the fish, she walked around the courtyard and checked the hygiene of various places. After confirming it was all up to standard, she returned to her courtyard. She got someone to boil some water and take a bath. Then, she lay down on her bed and read. Before sleeping, she spread out her divine senses to scan the surroundings. After confirming that only the Shizhu was sleeping in the West Wing room, she locked the doors and windows and entered her inner space. First, she took a look at the demands of people everywhere. Soon, she filtered out 3 pieces of crucial information. One was from the south, and it was a prayer from the wife of a county magistrate. Apparently, the first prince had forcefully recruited able-bodied men to rush his work. Many people had died, and she prayed that Mother God could bless the suffering commoners and stop this enslavement. The other was to pray that her husband would not be implicated. After Zhou Ying understood what was going on, she followed the faith of the county magistrate's wife and came to an exquisite courtyard in the county town. At this moment, the lady was coaxing a 3-year-old boy to sleep, but her eyes were full of worry. Zhouing found the study room, but she didn't find anyone. Ultimately, she had no choice but to head to the county government office. Zhouing soon saw a man in his 20s staring at a list and sighing. She leaned over and glanced at it, shocked to see that it was a list of today's deaths, with more than 50 people on it. More than 50 people died daily at this construction site. How terrifying was that? If this continued, how much more would have to die before the river embankment was repaired? Furthermore, this was after the various disasters. The labor force had already decreased drastically, and no wonder the county magistrate was anxious. At this moment, a man in his 20s walked in and spoke up, "Master, have you approved the compensation? Tomorrow morning, we must send the bodies back along with the money." "Xian, these are 10 taels of silver for a life. These are all strong laborers, the pillars of their families. How do you want me to approve such a small amount of compensation? Moreover, the number of victims has been increasing daily over the past half-month. I really can't sign this." After hearing this, Xian opened his mouth, not knowing how to persuade him. But after a moment, he still urged, "But the dead can't be brought back to life. 10 taels of silver is enough for an ordinary family to survive for 2 to 3 years. If you don't sign this, they won't even get the 10 taels of silver." "Ha! King Hui just wants my life." The county magistrate mocked his situation. He firmly believed that if this continued, his people would probably assassinate him soon. If it really doesn't work, well, just side with him. Otherwise, I'm afraid, no, the river embankment is related to the livelihood and lives of our entire county, or even more than 10 counties downstream. We can't just muddle along like the previous magistrates. So, but there's no news of the memorials and letters we sent out. It's obvious that they had been stopped. We're all alone now. Chapter 6, 16 Lightning Talisman. Tomorrow, bring more people to the construction site. We can't. That will make King Hui. No matter what, we can't sit still and wait for death. Otherwise, we won't even be able to avenge ourselves. After the county magistrate decided, he locked the name list in his drawer. "Master, 10 taels of silver is too little. Since he treats human lives as expendable, he at least need to cough up more silver." The county magistrate walked out after that. Xian hesitated for a moment before he left. After he had walked far away, he quickly got into a carriage and left the city. After arriving at the construction site, he looked for the King Hui. "This lowly one greets your highness." So, did he agree? No, he wants to bring a group of people over tomorrow to cause trouble. He wants to at least double the compensation for the dead. If he doesn't know how to appreciate my favors, so be it. When the time comes, he won't be returning. But, what, do you have no confidence in yourself? Or do you not want to be a county magistrate? No, why? You thinking of giving up halfway? You will be buried with him if that's your intention. When Zhouing heard this, she immediately recalled how Lord Sun was replaced and how he took down the entire Pingyang residence. She was instantly pissed. She knew this was to be expected. If he was capable of executing officials at will, why would he care about the lives of ordinary people? After hearing this, whether it was for the sake of his life or the position of county magistrate, Xian immediately shut up and retreated. After he had walked far away, Zhouing drew the most powerful lightning talisman that she could and stuck it on King Hui's body. King Hui instantly convulsed and fell to the ground. He was charred black, and his mouth emitted hot steam comically. After confirming that he was still alive, Zhouing immediately followed Xian out. Xian, who had yet to enter the carriage, heard the lightning bolt strike. He turned around and looked at King Hui's tent, which was still smoking. His legs went limp, and he fell to the ground. When the guards around heard the commotion, they immediately rushed in. When they saw King Hui's appearance, they all trembled from fear. After confirming that King Hui was still alive, they immediately brought him into the city to find a doctor. As for Xian, after King Hui had left for emergency treatment, he immediately returned to the city and found the county magistrate to tell him about this. When the county magistrate heard this, he immediately asked happily, "Is he dead?" "I don't think so. They were in a hurry to find a doctor." Mother God's words are true. Heaven's net has long arms. It seems that even Mother God can't stand it anymore. Tomorrow morning, we can take over the job at the construction site. When the county magistrate said this, he seemed to have thought of something. He sized up Xian and asked, "Xian, you and King Hui, master, this lowly one's family is in King Hu's hands. Didn't you say you want to visit your family?" "IIJ2 Inchu, you dumbass. Do you know where they are locked up?" "I know. They're in his temporary courtyard. But I'm afraid that if I make a move, King Hui will kill them. So, how about this? You send someone to rescue your family members tonight and take them into hiding overnight. They'll write a letter to Master. But writing a letter to Master will take a lot of time back and forth. I think it's better to make use of the fact that King Hui was struck by lightning." "You mean to sway the people's hearts?" "Yes, the law doesn't punish the masses. That's a good idea, but leave this to me. Take advantage of the fact that they are still busy saving King Hui to bring someone to save your family quickly. Remember, after you rescue them, go into hiding and don't do anything else." Chapter 617 Delivery Help. I hope we can meet again. Xian turned around and quickly left the residence. "Master, can he be trusted? Will he leak the news?" At this moment, a guard walked out from a corner and asked, "If it weren't for that lightning bolt, perhaps I wouldn't have believed it. I now need you to fan the flames and spread rumors of this to the masses. However, remember not to reveal anything important and just sow discord." "I understand. Now that chaos is brewing, I will act immediately." The guard received his order and turned to walk out. The county magistrate quickly wrote a letter and a memorial. The letter was written to King Rue, and the memorial was naturally for the emperor. Just as he was about to deliver them, Zhouing took them away and whispered, "Don't forget your motives." After she said that, she directly sent the letter to King Rue through her interspace and threw the memorial before the emperor. The emperor was shocked when he was disturbed by the memorial appearing before him. He remembered Mother God's routine and immediately picked it up without making a sound. After reading it, he closed it with a bang and gritted his teeth. "Hui, you are really my good son. I am here trying my best to encourage the people to have more children, and here you are wasting the labor force." King Rue and Zhou Huaiming, who were playing chess at this moment, were stunned when they saw the letter falling from the sky. The two of them looked at each other. When they saw that the ceiling was intact, the two of them looked at each other again, and Zhou Huaiming finally opened the letter. After smelling the fresh ink fragrance, he paused momentarily and continued reading. After reading it, he handed it to King Rue. "King Hui is such a beast. He's treating human lives like nothing." After King Rue finished reading it, his expression was not good either. However, he put the letter aside and said, "We don't need to worry about it. Since he has submitted a memorial, the emperor should have also received it by now." "Mother God, who else would have the ability to do so?" "True. By the way, since your wife is pregnant, aren't you supposed to go back? Otherwise, it'll be troublesome if someone is plotting against your unborn child." With Uncle Feng around, she'll be fine for the time being. On the other side, the county magistrate froze before realizing what had happened. He knelt on the ground with a thud. After he returned to his senses, he was even more determined to resist King Hu's tyranny. After Zhouing had settled everything, she arrived in Beiliao, a country in the north of the Ming dynasty. Because of the large production of potatoes last year, they were getting restless again. However, this time, there was internal strife in the royal family as the old king was dead. The princes were locked in an intense battle for the throne. Zhou glanced at the princes and found that only the eldest had a faint purple aura surrounding his body. However, he was fated to die early, while the other princes had no purple aura. Therefore, the next king would not be born among them. Zhou could not be bothered with them once she concluded that. The last thing that caught Zhou Ying's attention was that Chun Pong was looking for Gu Zi. Zhou glanced at the Gu family. After ensuring they were fine, she finally found Chin Pong and his servant in the town's inn. Seeing that Chin Pong was already covered in an aura of bad luck, she knew that he was in big trouble. Since she knew he was the Zhao family's son-in-law, she knew he would not be able to act arrogantly after a few more days. Therefore, she just gave each Gu family member a safety talisman and withdrew. She busied herself in her inner space after that. She picked some ripe strawberries off a plate after finishing the rest of her work. After eating the strawberries, she took a shower and left her inner space. Lying on the bed, a wave of drowsiness immediately struck, and she fell asleep quickly. After breakfast tomorrow morning, Zhou took Shizhu to inquire about the grape seedlings. She wanted to plant a row of grapes to make wine. Chapter 6 18 Spies Ultimately, she discovered that while the Ming dynasty had wild grapes on their mountains, no one had ever planted them. This allowed her to discover a business opportunity. On the way back, she suddenly realized that her faith had soared. While absorbing it, she checked the specific situation through her inner space. Zhou soon found the reason, and to put it bluntly, it was mainly the lightning that struck King Hui. Because of this, the county magistrate took over the construction site of the river embankment and doubled the compensation for the laborers who had died before. As soon as the news spread, not to mention the people under the Hui prince, even those ruffians and tyrants retracted their claws and trembled in fear. Therefore, people trusted Mother God even more and prayed ever so faithfully. At night, Zhou told Gu Chengrui about her punishing King Hui and how Chin Pong went to look for Gu Zi. Gu Chengrui was surprised when he heard that. Chun Pong's is sure dense. Did he make trouble for the patriarch's family? Not for the time being, or maybe he's incapable of that. However, I have already given them protective talismans, so there shouldn't be any problems. Okay, please take a look at them every day. Gu Chengrui smiled. By the way, when I went to the office today, I heard that King Hui was summoned back by the emperor. I think it has something to do with that memorial. He is too ruthless. This person must not become the emperor. Otherwise, those who oppose him will all be executed. Indeed, he is even more ruthless than the current emperor. I'm sure the emperor is aware of this too. When King Hui returned, he might go to the extreme. You mean he might try killing his father? That's right. The emperor has been suppressing the first prince's faction recently. The empress and king prince are getting suffocated, and I'm sure this is very irritating to them. Otherwise, the empress wouldn't have created trouble for us at the banquet last time. That's true. With the empress' shrewdness, she wouldn't make things difficult for me in public. Oh, right. Did King Kong cause you any trouble these past 2 days? Zhou asked. I've been avoiding him, so I didn't run into him. However, he sent someone to the manor to learn greenhouse planting techniques from me. In my opinion, he's just someone there to spy on me and sweet-talk me. As long as we were alone, he constantly praised King Kong and how much Princess Pingyang supported him back then. He would also proclaim how filial he was to Princess Pingyang and so on. It's getting a little annoying. Just be careful these days. Don't fall into his trap or let him catch something he can use against us. Zhou suddenly asked, by the way, how's Lord Zhao? He didn't cause trouble for you, right? He is now a tiger without claws. He looks mighty, but the emperor is closely monitoring him. Most importantly, I heard that his wife and children are getting on his nerves. They are starting to bully the concubines he left in Pingyang province. Their days must be getting difficult, so Chan Peng shamelessly went to our hometown to rely on the Gu family again. Zhou nodded. When you return to the manor, bring Niu Fugue. If he passes your test, you can let him be our butler. Uncle Zhou can manage the family, but he's getting too old to be presentable to the public. All right, we'll try to find out more about him. If he's usable, you can also relax a little. Gu Chengrui nodded in agreement. The couple washed up, and Zhouing spread her divine sense to scan the residence. After confirming nothing was unusual, she brought Gu Chengrui into her inner space. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.